with this is fun fact, the first time in Nintendo's history that they've ever announced a new console that has like a 2 at the end. And it's like a successive release, as opposed to like the era of new 3DS and 3DS Lite and
Game Boy
new Super.
Advance.
Super Nintendo, yeah.
At least Game Boy Advance was a little bit clearer, at least. But like they did some super confusing branding stuff. This is very clear, and it will be very clear. I imagine in April when they're like, all of these games are for Switch 2 only. You cannot play these on Switch 1. I think they will make that crystal clear, because if they don't, then like the selling point of this thing will be nil. Like they can't do what Sony did and do the whole cross-gen release strategy, and I think it's very doubtful that like the games they plan on releasing aren't going to run on Switch 1. They won't be Switch 1 won't be powerful enough for it. This is all speculative, by the way. This is not inside info, but this is.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that for Reset era for when they make it through.
My sense is kind of that the Switch will still have a like fairly healthy life for several more years, just because like indies are going to keep releasing on it, right? Like there will be a lot of people with a good incentive to just be like, well, a lot of people still have Switches. I'm going to put this game out on Switch and Switch 2 and Steam and
Yeah, and hopefully it's easy for a game company to just be like, okay, we're just going to release this on the Switch ecosystem, and then it'll kind of like it is on PlayStation. It's just kind of like it'll say, this is a PS5 version, this is a PS4 version, etc., etc. So hopefully that is all pretty seamless. But yeah, I mean, the brand identity of this thing, like from the beginning of that trailer, it's very clear. Like, you see that Switch? Yep, this is different. This is bigger. It's a new one. It says it has a 2 on the controller. It's a 2 on the system. It's like really trying to show you this thing is new. This is a new console. If you want to Switch to, if you want to play new Mario Kart, you got to Switch to.
Yeah, and you make a good point in comparing it to the Wii U, which has really been something I've been thinking about this entire time, is how the Wii U is like the comparison point that I hope I hope it isn't a comparison point. I hope we're looking at a Game Boy Advance situation, a Super Nintendo, list goes on, pick your Nintendo iteration. That's obviously what I would prefer here, is a console where I feel like it's an actual upgrade, it has a reason to exist. But I keep thinking about the Wii U because it's so recent, and because it just felt like such an example of a notice.
So recent, 13 years
super
ago.
recent. I mean, it's like the most recent one before the Switch itself. So it is recent enough in my memory anyway. But yeah, it is also an example of a thing where they were trying something that they hadn't fully baked yet with that tablet. And at the time, again, I was like, I don't understand the point of this, and it never made sense until the Switch 1 came out. And then I was like, oh, that's what they were trying to do. I get it now. So the Wii was just like the weird one, and it's not going to be an expectation setting thing where we need to compare everything to that.
yeah, with each subsequent Nintendo console, it becomes clear that the Wii is very much the outlier.
Yeah.
Most Nintendo systems are just a thing that plays games in a controller with buttons all they use to play the game.
Well, no, that's not true. I mean, the N64 came out and it was like cartridges, and the rest of the industry was going to discs, and also
Yeah,
it had this control room.
yes, but like compared to the Wii remote,
We must
Every, I mean, the DS was like Bluetooth, like everyone was like a touchscreen. Like, what the hell?
of course, yes. I don't mean to say that they're all identical or anything. I just mean that, like, by and large, Nintendo's at its best when you're just like, playing games with a controller. Some of those controllers are more similar than other ones, but like the Wii was just like dramatically different than pretty much any other Nintendo console when you zoom out to a certain distance.
Sure. The point I was making was just that a lot of them have been innovative in other
Oh, yeah.
ways. And again, I mean, in a few months we could be talking about how like this weird mouse thing has really
Yeah.
changed everything, and like who knows what kind of possibilities it will bring to the table. Miyamoto has some Mario Paint 2, and we're all
Yeah, well,
on the
Mario
lines of
Paint seems like a logical use for the mouse. I've seen that floated a lot. But every time somebody's like, Maddie, Metroid Prime 4 with the mouse, I'm like, I don't want to play that game with a freaking mouse.
Yeah.
Like, I'm worried about my arm.
I played Metroid Hunters with the stylus, and that was pretty cool. Like,
Yeah.
even with the stylus.
Okay.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it's rare for a Nintendo game to come out and like it not to feel good in your hand. So like, I think if they're doing a mouse, it'll probably work. It'll probably be.
You can imagine
Pretty
for
good.
Mario Maker and also for like like Zelda Maker, like some of those other maker type
Sure,
games, in
yeah.
addition to Mario Paint and all of the like more user generated creative games, that a mouse could be incredibly useful. And there's just like a subset of Nintendo sickos who do amazing things in those games, giving those sickos the sicko tools they need. And all in favor.
Get the same.
But or like PC ports that like are way better than mouse, RTS games or like other kind of like I don't know, Civ 7. That's probably gonna be.
They gotta put out some type of gamer pill of it. They're gonna make me play Civ 7 with that Joy-Con. I need something. I gotta do something on the side of the camera.
I'm picturing, you remember the attachment for the 3DS with the insane second like thumb wheel that you could stick onto it?
Yeah.
Like they'll come out with some kind of lap thing that's like the
exactly.
licensed Nintendo mouse
Like
pad.
a TV tray, like a licensed Nintendo TV tray,
Yeah,
but
right,
instead of like eating my meal off of it, I'm playing Civ 7 on the Switch too, and I'm frantically clicking the Joy-Con. I really am excited to feel it in my hands. Because like that's the thing, is like just actually touching it. And it's bigger, which I actually approve of as well. We haven't really talked about like the size of it, but those Joy-Cons, the original ones, always felt a little fiddly to me. So I'm also happy to see like those other ergonomic changes. While talking about ergonomics so much, they look more comfortable to my eye. I think they probably will be. The button to detach the Joy-Cons is a lot bigger now. I'm excited about that. Another rumor that's been going around is that there'll be Hall effect sticks for those joysticks. I'm really hoping that's true to prevent Joy-Con drift, which has been kind of the bane of Nintendo's existence throughout the Switch 1 life cycle. So I'm just excited for like a very literal hardware upgrade here in terms of everything working better, having more longevity, feeling better in my hands. Like those Joy-Cons are lit. And I have little hands.
Yes.
Betty, did you ever play Mario Paint on the Super Nintendo? Because it came with a mouse and.
Oh my god, you did?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
I never played it. That's
I had
amazing.
those.
That's a good sign for Mario Paint to come out if there was a previous
Oh, yeah.
mouse.
I'm so if there's like a Mario Paint 2, I will play the hell out of it. I played so many hours of that game. They have this like musical like
Yeah, the
conducting
notes.
thing. Oh my god, it's so good.
Well, and again, for kids, I mean, man, like, my nieces will love that shit if they come out with a Mario Paint game for the Switch. Like, every kid is going to play that. Like, and that, again, like, it's just such a great selling point for the console. That's what they do.
It's exciting. So yeah, we'll put a pin in this discussion because it's still so early. April 2nd is the Nintendo Direct that they've said where they're going to talk more about this thing, and that's when we can expect like the real lowdown, release date, the price, the launch lineup, like what teases they have for future games coming to this thing. That'll be really exciting. So we'll count down the days until then. Real quick story before we move on to another quick topic, which is that last Wednesday. Do you remember there were all those rumors flying around like, oh, Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be revealed tomorrow, like on Thursday? So on Wednesday, I went into the city and I was working at a coffee shop for a bit, and I kid you guys not, I'm sitting there at this kind of big table in Starbucks, and next to me, a group of teenage girls, 3 of them, sit down, they pull out a Switch, they pop it on the table, pull out the Joy-Cons, and start playing Mario.
Oh my god.
Like on the rooftop in that commercial.
Like in the commercials.
Was there a filming crew behind them?
Were there
I swear to God.
cups, and were they all like
was
Benetton
wild.
ad beautiful?
I was like, this is an omen. The Switch 2 is definitely getting that.
That's very
And you were right, it was an omen. You were part of an ARG, actually. That was Nintendo telling you something.
I'm going to be in the next reveal trailer.
Just in the background.
So real quick, we don't have a ton more time, but we should talk a little bit about the other big news from last week, which is that a website called Bloomberg.
Oh yeah, I heard
Yeah.
that, I think.
Bloombergo.
It's like a kind of like a Substack thing. Right?
Yeah, it's a Substack. It's a billionaire
They're kind of
Substack.
they're building it out, but it's a.
I think they're gonna make it.
Bloomberg News reported, some guy named Jason. Bloomberg News reported that PlayStation canceled 2 more live service games from Sony Bend, which was the developer behind Days Gone and the SOCOM games way back in the day, and also Bluepoint, which is the developer behind the Demon's Souls remake and the Shadow of the Colossus remake, and was purchased by Sony a couple of years ago. And Bluepoint is especially noteworthy, I think, because for many years now, since Demon's Souls, people have been theorizing and speculating about what they've been working on. And yes, as I reported last week, it turns out it's a live service game. This one was a God of War live service game. The Sunny Ben game was a new IP. But it's worth noting, PlayStation said in 2022 that they were going to release a dozen live service games by 2025. And I think they've released two, maybe? Does Destiny count? Helldivers 2 they released. That was a hit. Concord they released.
Did they know?
Was pulled from stores after less than 2 weeks, and then they canceled a bunch. Canceled Naughty Dog's Last of Us Online, canceled Spider-Man Online, canceled Twisted Metal, canceled London Studio game, canceled these two. And they've announced a game called Fair Games with a dollar sign. They've announced Marathon. They've announced or hinted at the Horizon game from Guerrilla, Horizon Live Service, which is different from the Horizon MMO that was made in Korea. That was just reportedly canceled this week. Two different projects. Horizon Online was actually made by Guerrilla Games in the case of Horizon. So that initiative has not worked out quite the way Sony might have hoped.
Man, this is such a waste. Really, just looking at this, this is such an unbelievable waste. Like, I can't believe the magnitude of the fuck up here, honestly. Like, looking at it and thinking about it, like, the amount of money wasted, the amount of people who threw themselves at projects that were canceled, and just thinking of the opportunity cost there, it's really mind-boggling for me. The number of different things that they could have been doing instead of this. And the only other thought I have looking at it is that this is one of those hindsight is 2020 kind of deals. But as we've seen, you can't release a whole bunch of live service games because people only like play one or two of them, and so you reach market saturation at a certain point. And like, again, I am a saxophonist. I don't know about this kind of thing.
I don't think this is hindsight of 2020. We've been saying this. We said this back then too. To be clear.
Okay, we did. Yeah, I mean, it seemed evident at the time, but like we're now really seeing that play out, and it's like, oh my god, like it's the most colossal mistake. It blows me.
So you know what's really the real shame here, and the real colossal mistake is that everything you said is accurate, but also the other part of that equation is that like many of these companies that Sony has had on live service games are single-player studios. They're studios
they were so good at thinking about it. I like
so not only is the opportunity cost of like, oh, they're not going to release it until the PS6, but it's also like it's like trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, and vice versa. It's like taking these people who have all this experience working on single-player games and making them do a multiplayer game, which almost never works out. Didn't work out with Anthem, didn't work out with Suicide Squad, didn't work out with Redfall. Like, it almost never works out because when you're good at one thing, it's like you have a bunch of guitar players. Yeah, a bunch of guitar players. You're like, hey, we're gonna do a drum one,
like brass quintet. Yeah.
God. It's such a mess.
It's very upsetting. And I mean, even just thinking about it's hard to imagine how much money was poured into this if you really add up all of the titles together. It is an unfathomable amount. And then to stack on top of that the human cost of people working on these projects that they weren't suited for because they wanted to be making single player games or they were just specialized in that, regardless of what they wanted to do, they had specialties. Like, it is actually unfathomable, the size and scope of this.
Yep.
So that's cool.
Yeah. It's definitely we don't know exactly how much money. I bet it was enough money to remake Bloodborne. Just saying. I bet it was enough money to do that.
Just an idea. Get it on the Switch too, I say.
Just throwing it out there. Could have done that maybe for a small percentage of this money.
I suspect there are other reasons that game has never been remade.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying, just to put things in some sort of helpful context.
But yeah, in Bluepoint's case, you know what's crazy about the Bluepoint case is that like they were a studio that remade things and remade things very well, and then got an opportunity to make a new game. But instead of kind of starting a little bit small and being like, hey, we've never made our own thing, we've never designed our own game, we don't have a ton of design experience at this studio, we've only made things more beautiful and redone them. Maybe we should start small and like do something in a couple of years. And it's like, no, we're going to do a live service thing. And they did. Most of them actually...
Yeah, no, the next fortnight.
Yeah, most of them actually worked on God of War Ragnarok. So it's the last few years that they've been doing this new thing, but it was clear, I think, to a lot of people on that team that it was never going to work out. Because when you have a bunch of single-player people like assigned to a live service game, it almost never comes together. It's really, really hard to make a live service game at all, let alone if you haven't done it before. Man, there's an argument to be made that Fortnite has single-handedly destroyed the video game industry, and
through no fault exactly of its own.
No,
just
no,
being good and making everyone want to emulate it.
by being good. Well, but it's not just that. Two ways. One is by making everyone want to copy it. The other is by